Thank you, Presiding Officer. My mum for many years was a modern languages teacher, and she'll be the first to tell you that I have no natural gift for languages. At school I was quite academic, but when it came to French I had to work a lot harder to be good at it. And I got a good grade, but that was in part because I had a fluent French speaker in my house. And I ditched French at the first possible opportunity that I could. I wanted to go to university, I wanted good grades, so I picked subjects that I liked and that I enjoyed, and French just quite frankly didn't fit into that. And I regret that now because I regret the obvious employability benefits that foreign languages bring. And as I've got older, I've developed a real love for Spain and all things Spanish. So I've forced myself to go back and try and learn Spanish. I've done a night class at Edinburgh University. I've had a private tutor that I've paid. And it's been torturous because I just don't have the natural ability to do it. And even though I now want to learn Spanish, I find it very, very difficult. So it's very much with great interest that I read the report that is referred to in the government's motion today. And I want to make an overall positive contribution. And I'll get the negativity parts out of the way first. The report has two flaws in it from my perspective. One, it recognises the need for an audit of the skills base within the education system, and I'm really disappointed that that hasn't taken place yet. Secondly, it also says that it cannot seek to estimate the amount of resources needed to deliver the pilot project, and I think without that we can't really underestimate the size of the challenge ahead of us. Like cute puppies and the aroma of fresh coffee, the idea of teaching modern languages to primary 1 kids is a great idea. It makes us feel good. We feel like we are doing good. But it's hard to keep the faith if we don't know who will deliver it and how much it will cost. Of course, I'll give way to Minister.
I will be positive, but what I would say is obviously some of the things the member mentions were not part of the remit of the group. Will she accept, however, that conversations between the government and stakeholders are the way to answer some of the questions she raises?
Kezia,
Absolutely, Presiding Officer, but I would have thought it should have been at the heart of the remit. How can you seek to tackle a problem if you don't know what resources or tools you have at your disposal to start it? So I think the audit around the skills needs is urgent, and I look forward to hearing the government explain how they're going to progress that. The teachers I've spoken to, however, are very, very positive about this initiative, but they're quick to highlight the training needs of teachers. If you really want kids to soak up a new language, you need to immerse them in that language from the beginning, and those points were well evidenced by Maureen Watt and Marco Biaggi. Asking a primary teacher with a higher in Spanish to take on this task is ridiculous and could be counterproductive. What we need to do is to empower kids to learn a language. It's not simply about teaching them the French or the Spanish for cat and dog. It's to empower them to ask questions. Como se dice? How do you say? That's the type of skills we need to be able to give young people to ask. Moving on, though, Presiding Officer, I'm pleased to see that the report recognises the role of mother languages which aren't English in the strategy for 1+2. Here are some stats for you, Presiding Officer. There are 24,555 kids in Scotland who have English as an additional language. That's 3.7% of all Scottish pupils. 3,588 of those are in Edinburgh, which represents 8% of the school population in our capital city. That's a hugely significant number, but when you get down to school level, it becomes even more significant. No less than 100 of the children at least primary school just down the road have English as an additional language. That's 36% of the school roll. That's a huge number, and of course it brings its challenges. But the school relish it. In fact, they celebrate it. Every time a new country is represented in the school, they hang a new flag. And I spoke to the head teacher who told me just last week they hung the Nepalese and the Guatemalan flags for the first time. That's fantastic, that's wonderful, it's everything about Scotland that we love in terms of its diversity. But of course it needs additional resources to support it. Edinburgh City Council has an English as an additional language service, and that's great as well, but it's hugely under-resourced. As I said, there are 100 kids at least primary school who have English as an additional language. They have access to 1.5 days a week of one teacher. That's all. That's only enough time to really train the teachers. These English as an additional language specialists never actually get anywhere near the kids that they're seeking to support in the classroom. So that time could be better spent with more resources. But we're kidding ourselves if we think the infrastructure is there to even support the kids already in our schools who have additional languages. There are just 6.2 full-time equivalent bilingual support assistants for the whole of Edinburgh. 6 people to support 3,000 kids. Of course.
Yeah, I certainly recognise what she's saying. In my last post, I had the great fortune to teach a Polish pupil who had just come into the country. It was a delight to teach. However, that boy was put in my class along with, it was an additional support class, along with a number of kids who had complex learning difficulties. And he had no other issue other than the language issue. Therefore, that was very much a resourcing issue, and that's the difficulties that teachers are facing on a day-to-day basis. And the support for him in the school and the support for me as a teacher was very, very limited. Indeed, I was more terrified than him at the prospect of having to teach him.
Kezia,
I welcome that, and I think what Neil Finlay has highlighted is actually getting to grips with English as an additional language will help the government strategy, because it will get you one step further along the way if we do this properly. So it is already referred to in the Modern Languages report, but perhaps if the Minister could seek to progress some of these issues, he'd be making his long-term goals more achievable at the same time. One thing Leith Primary did tell me, though, was that they relished the opportunity to teach modern languages in the primary school setting. In fact, they found the best way to get teachers to do it is to send them abroad. Now, you might think that would be really difficult, be really resource-intensive, but they found a source of European Union funding called the Communis Fund, and what that provides for is all the costs, all the travel, all the subsistence for teachers to go away from between 1 day and 6 weeks to learn to be a modern languages teacher abroad. Now, I found no reference to Communis in the language report strategy document. In fact, I found no reference to European Union funding anywhere in it. So I would strongly urge the Minister to go away and look at alternative sources of funding that he could perhaps draw on to progress his agenda. It doesn't all need to be brought from Scottish Government pots. To conclude, Presiding Officer, of course we are broadly supportive of the Government's ambition, but we need to see the audit so we can understand the resources needed to fulfil that ambition. When we know how much it will cost, we will be in a position to match that boldness with the necessary budget. Will the Government take the leap when the true cost is known? On Vieira, veremos, ver verdem sehen, we shall see.
Thanks very much.